think we're going to forego a roll call because it doesn't look like we've got enough folks to even get close to a quorum at this time. So I'm going to move immediately into presentations, and we're going to start with the Urban Ecology Framework with Heather Alhadeff. Is that how you pronounce it? Okay. Heather, you brought some handouts, is that correct?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very, very much for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it. There's some copies of the handouts outside on the table, and then I have some more here. So if you guys were already sitting in here, which some of you were, I brought them in here. Can I hand them out?
Sure, go ahead.
So yes, good morning. My name is Heather Alhadeff. I'm with the Department of City Planning. I work in the Commissioner's Office, and I'm the project manager for the Urban Ecology Framework. So I do appreciate your time this morning. And if I don't have the controller for the clicker, so okay. And we wanted to provide an opportunity to give an update on the Urban Ecology Framework and also how it relates to the next work tasks, which get into the tree preservation ordinance. So I appreciate the time. This is a very, very important matter, and it's going to be a pretty big lift. And so I appreciate who's listening now, and also if you can share this with your networks and friends as well. Thank you. So first, I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to explain what this is. The project is called the Urban Ecology Framework, and it's the first time the planning department has ever taken on something of this magnitude and this scale. The important thing was that the understanding of how all of these issues are related, and for example, trees and vegetation relates to soil and relates to stormwater, and all of these things are actually from an ecology standpoint related. And so we wanted to start off with a better understanding of the natural systems in Atlanta and have a lot more data than we've had in the past. Is it okay with that slide? Did it just so one important factor is to understand the natural systems, to really understand what's the original kind of nature to Atlanta, what's the legacy nature, what's the old growth forest, which stormwater, which streams and stormwater systems are most, is it moving? What that slide is supposed to be is a schedule.
Which is on the back of your handout.
Exactly. But the main point was to make it clear that we started the data analysis for all of the natural systems. So all of the urban ecology, we started that data, and we're going to come into having some public meetings in April that will bring out the recommendations from that. Part of the next workload, though, as we move into the summer, we'll be getting into the weeds of the regulations and getting specific to the tree preservation ordinance. But it was really, really important to have the tree preservation ordinance information grounded in more of this data, and that's why these things are connected and related. So this schedule is the entire urban ecology framework effort, which includes the tree preservation ordinance rewrite. There has been some I guess some folks in the public thought that we started the tree preservation ordinance rewrite. We had not started that part of the work yet, but we had started the urban ecology data collection and data analysis. So it was really important to let y'all know as APAB, and if you can again share with your networks, that we have not started the tree preservation rewrite work yet. That work is to come. That's going to be a big lift, so we're going to need a lot of help from the public on that. And we just really wanted to take the time today to make sure that everybody was aware of that schedule. So that's the main messaging for today. The next slide also has a link to this is the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. What we try to have is the Technical Advisory Committee are folks that perhaps work in the industry, work in other agencies, and can come to meetings during the day. And the Stakeholder Advisory Committee might be people that either have a history and experience with it or a knowledge on the topic, that can come to meetings in the evening. So that's kind of the breakdown of the two committees that we have. That's on the same website that has this information as well. So we just really wanted to get out today to bring awareness that the Urban Ecology Framework recommendations are coming and that we will be moving into the rewrite of the tree preservation ordinance. But that part has not started yet.
Heather, are there any APAB or NPU representatives? Are there any APAB or NPU representatives on your stakeholder advisory committee?
Absolutely.
Are your names there?
Fourth name from the top on the stakeholder advisory group is Al the Ball Guy Bartel.
All
I
right.
didn't miss the name finally.
So Mr. Bartel is part of that group. And how were these committees established?
We had, in the beginning, we had an application, and the technical committees tend to be other agencies that we work with. So we just did outreach for other partner organizations. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee, we had an application process that started when the Urban Ecology started, which was last in May.
And how can the NPUs help?
We really need help getting the information out there that we're doing this work. And again, it was very intentional today to be here to let people know, give them a heads up that we will be coming to these meetings this summer, especially are going to be pretty important to have involvement from everybody. So right now, it's just please spread the message, share the link. My phone number is on there as well. So it's really about making sure people are aware. That's the number one request right now.
I see one of my NPU neighbors on the stakeholder list and one of our NPU ones. So I'm certain that many of these people are active in NPUs.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you. I'd like to get a copy of that list. I would also recommend that attached to every name is a letter designation of which NPU they're involved with.
I see someone from MPD on that list. I'm curious though, because I would have thought you would be on the technical advisory committee rather than the stakeholder advisory committee. Did you select those people because of the hours that they were available, or?
I'm sorry, I was
Oh.
writing that down. What was the
Sorry.
question?
Oh, Tirsa Boutte is a member of my MPU. I would have thought you would have been on the technical advisory committee, or the stakeholder committee, being that he's in the tree business at all.
We just, somebody preferred that committee.
Oh, okay, so he selected that committee rather than you selected it for that
Yes.
committee? Ah, okay.
Are the committees locked down, or are they accepting new members?
We can.
Look into that.
Jim, did you allude that the technical people need not put a letter designation next to their name? Because if they are involved with an NPU in some form or fashion, even as a resident, I would still like to see a letter designation with their name.
I think it's a good idea to make sure that there's representatives from around the city.
Yes.
Not necessarily every NPU, but at least a representative.
I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions for Heather? And that's your presentation, Heather? This is.
Yeah. We're coming in April to the public meetings, and so we really want to make sure people are aware in advance and come in attendance.
Great.
Thank you very much.
for being here. Okay, we have a few more people in the room. Can I do just a hand count to see how many delegates or alternates we have representing you? Yeah, we're not even close.
12.
I think we'll try a roll call just to see if we can
Try.
We're pretty close.
If I call your name, please say that you are here loudly, because I have soft ears. Okay, great. MPU A, Brinkley Dickerson. MPU B, Richard Raw.
Here.
Dr. John Muzzy. NPC, Zach Gober. NPD, James Martin.
Here.
And myself. NPE, Elizabeth Ward. Sean Green. NPF, Debbie.
Here.
NPG, Ola Reynolds. Sonia Hodges.
Here.
NPH, Barbara Hubbard.
Here.
Charles Shelton. NPI, Eunice Glover. Jennifer Freeman. NPJ, Benjamin Dickerson.
Here.
Al Bartel.
Here.
NPK, Lita Harmon. NPL, Yvonne Jones. NPM, Michelle Schreiner. Rashid Muhammad. NPN, Amy Stout. Here. NPO, Carl Holt. Marcus Owens. NPP, Rasheen Hunter. Rasheen Hunter. NPQ, Eric Toomer. NPQ, David Gaducci Smith. NPR, Antonita Robinson. Alfred White. NPS, Chris Brown. Nick Hess. NPT, Terry Ross.
Here.
Donovan Dodds. NPV, Columbus Ward Jr.
Here.
Stephanie Flowers. NPW, Jack Bremler. Steve Carr.
Right here.
NPUX, Michael Hopkins. Ruben Burney. NPY, Chris McCord. NPZ, Ann Phillips. Sharita Grant. Here. 1 second.
One walk in the room.
Who just entered?
Here.
Oh, here. We do not have quorum.
Okay. But we're close. Okay, so that I'm going to continue with the presentations and then moving into board and task force reports. The Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook presentation is going to be delayed while the groups. Board task force reports. I'm going to start with the Citizen Review Board. Jim Hardy is going to present. Jim's our most recent appointee.
Morning. Jim Hardy. I'm the APAB NPU A through F representative on the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. Been there since October of last year. And the purpose of the ACRB is to improve communications and transparency between citizens of the city and the police department. We investigate citizen complaints against Atlanta police and corrections officers and make recommendations on corrective actions to the chief on cases where the allegation is sustained or proven. The board meets monthly, reviewing about 4 cases per meeting. Recently, because of a significant increase in the number of completed investigations, we're actually holding an additional meeting in both March and April. We've got 31 cases pending, and they're closing pretty frequently. We also attend training on a number of subjects, with Fourth Amendment training being the most current. Also, we participate in a variety of community engagement activities. One of the most recent was the MLK Junior Day March. I've been very impressed with the professionalism of the ACRB staff, and also the obvious dedication and caring of all the board members. I've seen excellent investigative work. I'm a retired investigator myself after about 40 years of it, and I've been very impressed with the staff work by the board investigators. They review documents and videos from body cameras and vehicle cameras. They interview witnesses. They interview the complainants, obviously, and then interview the officers who the complaints made against. And then they analyze all the evidence that they've collected and make recommendations to the board on whether we should sustain or exonerate the officer or that type thing. They do not make recommendations on corrective actions. The boards do that themselves. But even with all the investigative work, the excellent investigative work, there's still because of the wide variety of people that we have on the board, there's usually some pretty lively discussions during the board meetings on individual cases and also on the recommendation for corrective actions on those that are sustained. We also have a public comment period during each board meeting, and the public comments have been primarily very nice toward the board, very appreciative of what the board's doing, and that makes me feel like we're accomplishing something anyway. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Mr. Carr?
Thank you. I would call this a little bit of housekeeping, but for those of us who do not have the United States Constitution memorized, when you say Fourth Amendment, if you could go into a couple of words, and also as far as acronyms are concerned, you, me, everybody else would explain what an acronym is, or just go ahead and say it, because there's got to be at least one newbie listening in or in the audience that when they hear an acronym, they don't know what it is. I've seen their eyes glaze over.
Fourth Amendment basically asserts the constitutional amendment on searches. As far as acronym goes, Atlanta, EPAB, that's where we are. I hope you know what that is. ACRB is the Atlanta Citizen Review Board.
Thank you.
Any other acronyms that anybody got questions about? Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm always happy when our appointees come back and report. I just wanted to ask, generally, are all our Atlanta police people using the body cams now? And are these meetings open? Can we attend, see them, when and where are they? And I know you just started doing this, but are the ACRB recommendations being taken and used?
Great questions. I figured many of those would come up. The body-worn cameras, most of the officers are using them, but a number of the complaints that we have investigated have been concerning when those cameras are turned on. And there's also, it's not automatic that you get audio at the same time you turn on the video. There's apparently two separate buttons, and this past meeting, one of the complaints was the officer did not turn on the audio at the same time the video started. By and large, when the body-worn cameras are used, it's best evidence for sure, because it records not only what's happening, what you can see, but records conversations. And in most instances we've had so far, the body-worn cameras have led to exoneration of police officers. As far as recommendations, most of the cases we've reviewed since I've been there have resulted in findings of unfounded or exoneration. Exoneration, the difference is basically exoneration means the act occurred, but it was within reason, that type of thing. The last report that we got from the executive director on the percentage of recommendations was low. It was 30%. And that's disheartening to me. I think that's improved, but I don't have the statistics for that. We do get letters from the chief periodically telling us what action was taken based on board recommendations and also based on the internal investigations by the Atlanta Police. We have a representative from the Atlanta Police Internal Affairs, not what it's called, but that's basically what it amounts to, that attend each meeting, and we do not investigate at the same time, but we do coordinate the results of the investigations, and they've been pretty much the same. So that's heartening. It is a public forum. Anybody is welcome to attend, and they are now. There's a website, acrbgovernment.org. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Mr. Brown, QB, thank you for your service. It's really great to hear these reports.
Richard, could you speak up, please?
Am I speaking up loud enough?
Yeah, now you are.
Oh, okay. Since we're in this vein about asking about cameras, it occurred to me that, we see these reports on the internet of bystanders taking video with their cell phones and that sort of thing. Do you ever consider that, or do you ever see it, or is it officially, part of your purview? Do people bring that stuff in and look at it? Or if they did, would you look at it? Or do you even know if the structure of the ACRB allows it?
The investigators actually look at that type thing. If any of the witnesses come forward with any video evidence on their own, handheld cameras or most likely phones, then they do look at that as part of the investigative process. That would be standard. In addition to obviously the official cameras that are on the cars and the body worn cameras.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Jim,
very
thank
much.
you. We appreciate you being here. We also have Dr. Newmark, who is here with the Code Enforcement Commission.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not Code Enforcement, it's Ethics Board.
I'm Jerry Newmark. I'm your representative to the City of Atlanta Ethics Board, and I'm going to go over just a brief overview, then entertain some questions. The Ethics Board is a 95% independent board constituted to investigate ethics complaints against city employees, city board and commission members, anyone who has official contact with the city. Now you may wonder, 95%? Why? It's because when we first started, we were 100% independent. Unfortunately, due to the state constitution, we have to be approved now by the legislative branch, which of course in this case is our city council, and it has to be signed off by the mayor. That is a result of a court case in DeKalb County where it was found that totally independent groups cannot penalize at all because they're not part of any government. So as a result, we had to change our way of appointing or nominating members, but then go through the regular process of having them as members. As I said, the purpose of the Ethics Board is to look at and investigate any lapse of ethics that may occur among city employees, board members, etc. One of the biggest misunderstandings about the Ethics Board is what our jurisdiction is. The fact is, any time there is a complaint made, it has to be justified by an actual portion of the ethics code, which means that sometimes what I would think is unethical and what you may think is unethical turns out to be something we can't look at because according to the code, it's not unethical. And a case in point is an elected official who seeks employment with the City of Atlanta directly after that elected official left office. Well, I mean, we would all think that that's pretty unethical, according to the city charter, but it was never written specifically in the ethics code, so as a result, we really can't touch that, that particular kind of issue. So, I would say if you have any concerns about ethics, by all means, please contact us. We have the integrity hotline, and as a matter of fact, there's a table out there with the telephone number of the integrity hotline. And we'll determine whether it's something within our jurisdiction, within the jurisdiction of the compliance officer, or within jurisdiction of the city auditor. That will be a clearinghouse, and hopefully it would get to the right people. So most of the things we investigate are failure to fill out the ethics declaration form that y'all should be in the middle of right now, using city property or using city time. We've had a few of those. Probably the biggest case we had to run across was an organization within city government wanted to, instead of, let me ask you this. How many of you know what consideration of contract is? Anybody know the term consideration of contract? All right, that means that in the state of Georgia, actually throughout the whole United States, if an organization gives a service to another person or organization, that person receiving the service has to reward, I guess that's the best word to use, the organization giving service. And you do that all the time. For example, if you buy a car, you pay a down payment. If you buy a house, you put down earnest money. That's legal. That's consideration of contract. A contract cannot be official, cannot be consummated until consideration of contract has been given. Well, in the state of Georgia, it's sort of agreed that money should be the kind of reward for consideration of contract. It's easy to trace. We can look at it and see, okay, this is how much I asked for, and it's very direct. Well, in this case, the city, the other organization of the city asked for a skybox in the new stadium, the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And when they went to do that, they were turned down by the ethics board about 3-4 years ago. When the Super Bowl came in, this particular organization came back and said, we were wrong as an ethics board because they have a vested interest in having a skybox, and they had a bunch of reasons why they should have gotten that for consideration of contract. But again, we turned them down. So I'm not going to go into more detail because it still could be a pending case as it was closed without prejudice. But nevertheless, those are the kinds of things we deal with. So I'll take questions if you have any, and be glad to answer them.
While we're waiting for questions, I just wanted to remind people that there are representatives from the ethics office that are out in the hallway. If you've not completed your financial disclosure process, they're here to help. They can do both, do it electronically or by paper if you meet their criteria. For most of us, it doesn't take very long to do. And it applies to NPU chairs and vice chairs, APAB delegates and alternates, and representatives of, that are representatives to city boards and commissions.
Hi, Jerry. Since you're giving such an entertaining presentation here, I wanted to ask a question. in what you've seen over the last couple of years, is there sort of one source or one chronic violator or category of violators that seems to come before you in this role?
Consistent violators themselves, no. We have, in the year and a half I've been a member, nobody has appeared more than one time. Although, as I say, I mentioned this organization, they appeared once before I was a member of the Ethics Board. Category, yes, very definitely, and what Madam Chair had just mentioned, and that is failure to fill out the financial disclosure. That is about 90% of our cases.
Jerry, we now have, or we are in the process of creating a task force for the promotion of public trust. Does that have any relationship to the ethics board?
Not the task force, that's completely separate.
And so the board doesn't have a member on the task force or anything?
They're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be.
As it's right now kind of the formulative aspect, so yes, there is supposed to be a member, but the whole thing has not been completed yet.
In the proposed Office of Independent Compliance, is it possible that the ethics board could combine the two organizations and alleviate one more organization? I know that the duties are somewhat separate, but it seems like modifying the ethics board might be a good path to travel. I assume that the council has looked at that at some point and come up with a different scenario. What is your opinion?
Okay, well, at the present time, the newest ordinance does exactly that. It is combining the ethics board with a new compliance board, but that ordinance has not been passed. That's a proposed ordinance. It temporarily, at least, combines our ethics officer with becoming the compliance officer. But that has just hit our desk about a week or two ago, so as an ethics board, we haven't had a chance to sit down and discuss it. What it would mean is we would go from 7 to 11 members. The additional 4 members would be experts in compliance as opposed to ethics. So that is up for discussion now. I haven't, for some reason, we all have the ordinance, we all have a copy of the ordinance. Nobody seems to be too ready to jump into it until we discuss it and see how everybody feels. My gut feeling is, and this is true of my opinion, since you asked my opinion, is sort of wait and see how it works. Is it something that is good for the city? Is it something that's good for the boards? Or do we still want to keep them separate, compliance and ethics separate? Because there is a separate mission. They're not exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jerry? No, Jerry, thank you. It's always good to see you.
Okay, I'll be out at the table, and so if anybody has any additional questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Hello, Ms. Hubbard.
Good morning. I just wanted to remind everyone that on the third Saturday of the month, there is recycling at Greenbrier Mall from 9 until 2, so we encourage you to bring your recyclables over there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brunel Thomas with NPUK, and I'm representing the Licenses Review Board. And the only report I have is that we're still hearing cases, and one of the things that I want to remind NPUs, if you adverse an application, and it's really important to you, please show up at the licenses review board and present your reasons and your thoughts about it. No other report. If you have any questions, please ask me.
Ms. Thomas, are you finding that people are objecting to licensing and not appearing before the board?
Occasionally. Most times, the NPUs have a process. Many of them have different processes by which they evaluate the applicants that come to them. And most of them meet the legal muster for the LRB and for the NPU. But occasionally, there may be a conflict between what meets the legal muster and what the NPUs want or don't want in their neighborhoods. And in those instances where there is a conflict, it's important that persons show up.
Janelle? Oh, never mind.
Yes. Janelle, we've got another question for you.
Yeah, it's come up a few times where applicants have asserted that this or that reason is not a valid reason to deny a liquor license. I wonder, is there, or could you tell us a list of valid reasons for denying a liquor license? Other, of course, than the applicant being a felon, for
It's
example.
your definition of valid. Because what is valid according to the law and the investigation that has been done, they have to comply with what the legal aspect of it. But as a neighbor, then what we consider to be valid may not be within the confines of what is legally the legal standard. And so in many instances, all applicants are not the same. And it's important, I think, for the neighbors to understand what is legal and what is your preference.
So the board has some discretion then in considering applications?
When you say discretion,
As far as what you would consider,
we all have our ideas as a board member, and you have your individual vote on what you think should be, not to minimize what the investigators have done in terms of the law. So the conscience is not taken away from you.
I'd like to augment your question if that's all right. I think what is being asked is, does the board have the ability to step outside the box and not just what is the law on their vote, or keeping in mind what is the law when they vote, but they can also take the human side of that in the interest of the neighborhood and apply that as well when they make their vote? And does that count?
It depends on how many votes that go along with you. If it does not meet the majority of the board, then your vote matters, but it doesn't matter in terms of the movement of the actual application.
Not getting into the actual voting, but does the board member, are they supposed to consider the strict confines of the law, or are they supposed to look at the neighborhood in terms of what their desires are? Does that weigh?
Well, it's an individual, it's kind of like voting in here. Many of you have different ideas and things that you think should or should not be done. and you have different ideas about that matter. But then the general thing is that we do look at what the law calls for. And then there are other matters that the law, it may be silent on some things when the applicant comes before the board. So, and I just say for me, I look at the legality of the matter first, and then secondly, I do look at the neighborhood and the continuation of how things move forward.
I just wanted to add, good morning, John McKinley with the planning department. Back to Jim's point, if you don't mind, Mr. Janelle.
Sure.
This question.
Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
This question about are there grounds for denial? There are like 8 sections. I just pulled it up in the ordinance, section 1057, like 8 points, 8 reasons for denial. So there is sort of reasons for denial. Did that answer your question?
Hopefully I'll pull that section up and have a look.
But it's the general feeling of the most members of the board is that the licenses and review board has done a thorough investigation before presenting it, and they will usually not present it if there are some questions, but then sometimes we can overlook some things that may be questions. And that's where I think that my discretion comes into place with that.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, that ends our committee reports. We'll move it, I'm sorry, board and task force reports. And we'll bring us up to the committee reports. CHS, Jim?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. We met on Monday and discussed the 4 resolutions that are listed on this agenda. Made a modification to one of them, which is the one with regard to affordable housing conditions, and that was in response to the comment that John made on that at our last meeting. The others are essentially as you have seen before, although I don't think we had paper copies for distribution of the second 2 at the last meeting. You should have copies of them all, so if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. There are several other things we're working on that aren't yet ready for prime time. I submitted written reports to Debbie on those matters, and that's about all. I guess I should announce the next meeting. Probably should have pulled it on my calendar before I started talking. And that, of course, is not coming up right now. That would be the second Monday in April, which is the 8th, and that meeting, or those meetings will begin at 7 p.m. At Chin Chin Restaurant, 1750 Howland Road. Okay, any questions?
There is only one item that is up for vote, which we do not have a quorum, is that correct?
I believe we were going to vote on 2 items, but we don't have a quorum, so the number of items that we're not voting on is sort of irrelevant.
I mean, proposed and FYI. Oh, there's the second one, I see it. Okay, thank you. So we'll hold these 2 items till next month unless we get a quorum later today. And we may have
I'm sorry, I need to leave the meeting because of a family emergency. There's one thing, though, that I want to do before I leave, and we skipped over the Beltline TADAC committee report. As you all know, we've had 5 vacancies on that TADAC, and it's really important that APAB has the representatives on the board. So I'm going to invoke the bylaws and make those appointments for Mandy Lane, who is from NPUW, and Ken Wilkinson from NPUD. I've spoken to both candidates or vetted them through their NPU chairs. I think they make very good candidates and representatives. They're very anxious to be more engaged in their community. Is there any concerns or any information that you want to share about those candidates? If not, I'll communicate that information to the City Council.
I'm Steve Carr from W, and I've never heard of that person before. There's no attendance at any of our zoning committee meetings that I know of, or general membership meetings either, so I'd like to find out more about her.
Okay, I can make sure that you have a copy of her resume and the information that she's provided.
Thank you. And Dana Scott from NPY just came here, so I believe we have a quorum.
Unfortunately, Mr. Scott is not on our list.
I noticed that. There are 3 of us. Gloria's at a meeting today for training. She's the alternate designated. I guess they didn't get informed or somebody wants it. I've been the delegate for the last 8 years.
Go ahead, Jim. John.
I'm guessing the chair, the current chair wasn't aware, so when he sent that form, he didn't include your name.
Well, originally, he signed up to be the alternate, Chris McCord.
Ma'am, if you've got your hand up, you need to come to the podium so that folks can hear you.
My only reason for being up here is I thought people came in the room before you left. I thought maybe we could vote on it.
Okay.
And you have Charles Singleton for the alternate for NPUH. My name is Lena Reed Morrow. I'm the new alternate for NPUH, and I signed in, and I talked with Jennifer last week, and so it should have been already updated.
Okay, Jennifer's no longer president.
I know, but she
So-
was the communication officer, right?
Right, but the bylaws state that the NPU chair needs to communicate with the planning office or with the
I'm
president.
sure Kathy did, Kathy Crawford.
John is our official.
Yeah, so Kathy Crawford, Ms. Crawford did submit a form. I can double check if your name was on that list. But whatever names that I received, shared that with the president of APAP. So.
Right. And we-
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I'm sorry.
Tell me what I need to do so that I don't have this getting up in the early morning.
Yeah, it's a problem for all of us, as you can tell.
Mhm.
The, confirm with Kathy that she sent her leadership form or an email to John with your name as delegate or alternate?
Alternate.
Alternate.
Mhm.
So that we have that on the record, and then John will communicate it to me, and we'll make sure that you're on the sign-in list.
Okay.
Okay. Your NPU is not the only one that is remiss. Is that the right word to say? The other thing I wanted to mention before leaving is that we do have committee reports. I didn't make a full set for everyone, but if you're interested in the committee reports, that information is available at the front. And Eric, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. Committee on Council, Mr. Ross.
Good morning. Terry Ross of BUT, Chair of Committee on Council, APAP Committee on Council. Before I go into the report for Committee on Council, I wanted to address the presenters of the Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook who did not appear today. And it's related to the NPU initiative by Center for Civic Innovation. They felt like it was more important for them to retool their presentation and let the APAP body have a conversation about the NPU initiative coming from Center for Civic Innovation. So that team will be back to present the playbook in April. sorry. I went about the long way to say that. But, they'll be back in April to play book. Now, this morning, Committee on Council met, and one of the first items on the agenda was the NPU initiative launched by the Center for Civic Innovation. And what came out of the committee was that we recommend that the APAP body take a position on this initiative, whether it be positive, negative, or no position at all. By some, this is deemed as a threat to the NPUs. Others is deemed as a possibility for improving the NPU system. And there were lots of questions regarding it as well. And so, Committee on Council recommends that this body take a position on this initiative by Center for Civic Innovation.
Do you have a recommendation as to what the position might be?
That's a great question, Eric. No, I do not. We did not formulate a recommendation for the body. And for that, I apologize. We were somewhat dysfunctional this morning. But
Can I task your group to formulate and come back with a recommendation and supportive action?
Absolutely. You absolutely can. Yes. And that's the playbook, the initiative, everything else was pretty much tabled because of the discussion. And so we will be able to be back in April. That concludes the report. I'll take any questions.
As somebody who's been involved with this body off and on for in excess of 20 years, yes, I have an opinion. This organization and the NPU process was started, initiated, eviscerated, and it's still eviscerated. We have a political culture in this building and in governments all over the country and worldwide, for that matter, that people in governance are not interested, don't want to hear from citizens and citizen organizations. We do not have an appeal process. This process started by Kyle Kessler and CCI, Center for Civic Innovation, is like an auction. It's got to start someplace. And it's more than just one person. To me, giving an opinion from time to time, lambasting the process because people don't want to make it work. An auction starts at a number. We don't end at that number. $1, $2, whatever it happens to be. This is a good, formal or semi-formal process, and I appreciate Kyle and his group doing this. So as far as an opinion from this body, it's a starting point. It's too slow as far as my opinion is concerned, but I'm just one person.
Thank you, Steve. Ms. Thomas?
Good morning. As I think about this, and one of the things that I thought about over the years, one was the creation of the Atlanta, it's now called the Training Institute, to train leaders, thinking that we would understand better about how the NPU system works. But technology and change has come so quickly and so fast that we are changing things without fully considering the impact of the whole city and who this city has come to be and will be in the future. And whatever process that's taken to evaluate, I think the evaluation component is first and foremost with evaluating the effectiveness of the APAB and the NPU system and how all of this works. And without that evaluation and changing, without that, it's not just opinions, but we need to consider opinions as a part of the facts as we move forward with this. And I don't know if we've had a presentation, and I've not been a part of it, from the Center for Civic Innovation to get a clear understanding of what it is that they want to do and how they plan to move it and what their knowledge base is of the NPU system since its creation.
As I understand it, there have been several presentations by the organization, and I also think there'll be more in the future. Is that correct, Todd? Yes. So maybe stay tuned in terms of getting dates, or maybe you can get Kyle's contact information and work directly in being informed from him when the next meeting is. That's what I would suggest.
And Eric, I was just going to respond to Ms. Thomas's comment. The launch was Thursday, you know, and in terms of the beginning, the Center for Civic Innovation brought in all the right parts and points for that. Bunny Jackson, the wife of Mayor Jackson, was a panelist at this event. This was Thursday night at the Old City Council chambers, and as well as the planning director for Mayor Jackson was also present as well and shared his insights on the NPU system. And so they did an extensive, during the launch, there was an extensive part on the history of the NPU system and how it evolved and as to where it is today. So all that was made available, and there is actually a video of the entire event itself that Kyle can provide because there's a link to it. So and I can send that to Debbie, and she can distribute it to the entire APAC body.
Maybe copy Jennifer on that, requesting, because she is communications, and she might need to do that based on some of the things that Debbie might be going through.
Sounds good. I almost said Jennifer who, Eric. So, okay, Jennifer Friedman. Okay.
Yeah, that's a CC. Thank you.
Kyle Kessler with the Center for Civic Innovation. We're not on the agenda for a presentation, but I just wanted to give just a quick update here rather than public comment. So we did have our official sort of public launch event, and I'll speak to the crowd. On Thursday in the Old Council Chambers, we had over 200 folks that were at capacity for the room. Because of that, we did have a wait list. We had standing room only. So overall good, we had a good turnout. The video is available online, either on our Facebook channel or on our website. We have a new website for this initiative, npu.civicatlanta.org. Outside, there are fact sheets that hopefully can answer some of your questions regarding what our work is. But we're also doing this work to help educate folks on the NPU system. So one site is just dedicated to information about the NPU system overall, about its history, about its purpose, and how folks can get connected to the existing structure. So hopefully, if you have any questions, please let us know. We're just trying to provide information. We're trying to collect the data. To Ms. Thomas's point, we've done some historical research so far, but it will be this summer into the fall that we'll be working with partners to do an evaluation of what's currently happening. Not just people's opinions, but we want people's opinions, but to get the facts so we can have good conversation grounded in the reality of what's working and what's not working today. So all that's out on the fact sheet. We do have a press release specifically about the initiative as well. That's outside. Feel free to pick up a copy. And my business cards are outside as well. So if you have any questions, ideas, our next meeting, which is helping to find partners who want to be involved in this work, whether it's an existing organization or individuals that have particular sort of interest in helping look at the NPU system, improve the NPU system, get people more engaged in the community. activities. That will be on April 11th at the Center for Civic Innovation at 8 o'clock. We know that's not the most convenient time for everybody, but as Steve mentioned, we have to start somewhere. So we had the last meeting on Thursday night, so this one's good in the morning, and we'll continue to have different meetings at different times, different days of the week to get as many folks involved and engaged as possible. And we will be providing information routinely on our website through digital channels. We'll be going to NPU meetings to reach out to folks where they are. So please hold us accountable. Please course correct us if we need it. We need the feedback, but we are here to serve the citizens of Atlanta and make sure their voices are heard. And that collectively we're shaping the city. That it's not just a mayor or just a council that should be calling the shots, but instead, as Mayor Jackson and folks at that time envisioned, that public participation was crucial to moving the city forward, to being the progressive, visionary place that we claim to be. So I'll save other comments for public comment, but please come talk to me. Please get involved, and let's work together. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Stout? Okay. All right. Moving next to transportation, Mr. Bartell.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, the Transportation Committee will be meeting on March the 23rd. Again, I'm Al Bartell, Chairman of the Transportation Committee for APAB. The Transportation Committee will be meeting on March the 23rd, that's the fourth Saturday, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. The address is 1905 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, Atlanta, Georgia 30314. Again, the address is 1905 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, Atlanta, Georgia 30314. That's March 23rd, next Saturday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. The Transportation Committee will be meeting. There are three particular items we will be discussing. One is Senate Bill 131, which passed the Senate to design a state board to manage airports around the state of Georgia, including the Atlanta airport. The other issue we will be taking on is the council's recommendation for a Department of Transportation for the city of Atlanta. And the third one we'll be taking on is the impact of the MARTA statewide design system to be MARTA to be included in the statewide design system for transportation initiatives. All three of those discussions will happen on March the 23rd, Saturday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., 1905 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard. This information will be communicated to our communications framework for APAB and be sent out to all of the APAB representatives and stakeholders of the Atlanta Planning and Advisory Board. Mr. Vice President, that concludes my comments on the committee. I'll take any questions or comments at this time.
I'm sorry, Alan. I was trying to listen, but I may have missed it. Did you address the legislation to take over, in the attempt to take over the Atlanta airport?
I did not address it. I just mentioned it, but I can address it. It is Senate Bill 131. The Senate passed the bill to design an all airport management board statewide to be appointed mainly by the governor, Speaker of the House, and the lieutenant governor. And that board will look at the funding design, the design of law for management, and how the 13 planning divisions of the state of Georgia will be managing the municipal airports under those jurisdictions. And in effect, in layman's language, the accountability for managing the airport will no longer be under the jurisdiction of the city of Atlanta, Georgia. The House will probably take it up either this week or next week. I think they'll take it up next week, and that vote will be coming, and it will drastically impact the public policy design, the funding design, and the management design of the city of Atlanta and the management of the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
Transportation Committee have a recommendation on that?
Transportation Committee has two recommendations. One is that the overall board includes appointments from the 12 planning districts around the state. That would allow the city of Atlanta and other airports in the 12 county district to be included in the decision-making process of management, funding, and the public policy. The other one is, if that is a recommendation that is included, then the Atlanta Planning and Advisory Board would have an opportunity to give direct and indirect input on the management, design, and sustainability of the overall legislation.
Al, have you, by any chance, looked at the legality of this bill based on the Federal Aviation Commission edict that this cannot take place?
The courts have upheld statewide accountability for managing municipal airports. The reference point that the court has used is that transportation is now no longer a local phenomenon, but an integrated global system. And therefore, global accountabilities in terms of technology, integrated management systems, and the design of funding strategies. The courts have used those three reference points to indicate that a statewide authority has the most reliable access to technology, the most reliable access to jurisdiction statutes and laws, and is the entity that the Supreme Court looks to in terms of accountability and not local jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Terry Ross, MPUT. I am opposed to the legislation that's currently before the state body, and I would like to make a recommendation that this body oppose that action as well.
Terry, at this point, because we do not have a quorum, we are going to remand that to the next meeting or to the executive session, the next executive session, where we can discuss that and then take a vote.
That's great, but you did get that recorded, Melissa? Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Jennifer Freeman, is anybody able to speak for education? Okay. Ann Phillips, finance, executive. I am not prepared to follow up on Ms. Kopczynski's report. Okay, that concludes the executive. Upcoming events. I turned it off. Okay, thank you. Upcoming events, April 7th, APAB executive meeting from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Location is to be determined. April 20th, APAB general meeting, standard meeting time and place, which is at 10 a.m. till noon, committee room 1, City Hall. Moving on to NPU announcements. Are there any NPU announcements? Ms. Thomas?
Renella Thomas, NPUK, and also with the Historic Western Heights Bankhead Neighborhood Association. We have an election that's taking place in this city, and it's Council District 3. And early voting has ended, and that was a dismal failure in terms of the number of people who showed up to vote in that election. And there are 9 candidates that are that are on the ballot. And Tuesday is election day. And one of the things that I've heard from the candidates that are running is that there have been so many political forums that they couldn't get to the people because they were attending forums. And while it's important to have forums to get information from the candidates, I would encourage anyone who is in District 3 to please go to make sure that they vote on Tuesday. And the second thing, I suspect that there will be a runoff with so many candidates participating in this space. And I would be willing to work on a forum with those two candidates to get the information from them in a group setting. So if your NPU is in District 3, please call me so that we can talk about how we can get the residents and the voters information regarding the possible runoff. Thank you.
Please present your number if you would like them to call you.
I'd like for them to send it to my email, which would be Weston, WESTIN, Heights, HEIGHTS, bankhead@gmail.com. Thank you.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Okay. Public comments, or are you on?
This can actually fall under NPU announcements, but I guess we can also do public comments. Good morning, members of APAB. John McKinley, Planning Department. As I was getting ready to speak, I just actually remember this is my first time at the podium, so if I sound nervous, it's because I am. But in my 2 years. But I just wanted to share with you guys an update regarding the Atlanta Urban Design Commission's annual awards. This is the 42nd year for the Excellence Awards. 42nd year for the Excellence Awards, and third year for the Design Awards, Community Design Awards. And the nomination period for the Community Design Awards actually ended yesterday around 4 p.m. And to use a term that Ms. Thomas used, the submissions were dismal, very, very dismal. It was a lackluster effort. So the director of the Office of Design, Doug Young, what he wanted to do is put a blurb on all NPU meeting agendas starting the last week of this month, and it'll carry over until the third week of April until we catch up. Basically to remind you guys about submitting nominations from the floor. So I actually wanted to share that blurb with you guys this morning.
So you're extending the deadline?
No, so the deadline hasn't been extended, but we are allowing nominations from the floor as we did last year and the year before. So once the NPU submits a nomination in February, March, the nominations go back to the NPU for a vote. So while some NPUs will be voting on their original nominations, some NPUs will actually just nominate from the floor in end of March, early April. Does that make sense? So we're not really extending the nomination period. It has ended. But however, every year they also allow nominations from the floor. Or extended nomination period. Yeah. Just went all the way around. Well, let me share this blurb with you. The Community Design Awards are a way for the NPU to recognize the buildings, public spaces, events, art, organizations, etc. that make a community a better place to live. Examples of previous Community Design Award winners include neighborhood events, community organizations, new buildings, public art programs, individuals, organizations who have made a significant contribution to a neighborhood, public agencies working in that part of the city, etc. Based on the nomination's location, each nomination was assigned an NPU for voting purposes. There can only be one Community Design Award winner from each NPU, regardless of the number of nominations. The NPU may also decide that none of the nominations warrant a Community Design Award. So again, just a friendly reminder that nominations can be made from the floor. This will be on all NPU meeting agendas starting the last week of this month and carrying over until the third week of April. And that's pretty much it regarding the Community Design Awards. And one other announcement, Erica, really Debbie wanted me to share, and I confirm that this is okay to share. Erica Pines, Assistant Director for the Neighborhood Coordination Division, her last day with the City of Atlanta will be March 29th. So just wanted to give you all a heads up. She will be transitioning to MARTA, so we wish her much success in that role. Thank you.
What's your job title? What's your job title?
She'll be working in external affairs.
Can you list the NPUs that have nominated?
I believe just NPUX.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question or comment, but the process for those nominations has always been sort of mystifying to me, in that we in NPUD made a nomination and then it was sent back to us to make it again. And I got the impression that we weren't supposed to make the nomination initially, but we're supposed to sort of let our members make whatever nominations they wanted and sort of wait and see what showed up, which was essentially what we did.
But we only got one nomination.
Right, and so I guess what I'm saying is that the process itself seems flawed, and that if, you know, I mean, if we were to take it up, as we now will from the floor, that seems like the way we should have handled it from the beginning, rather than waiting for people who are nominally unaware of all this to submit something to somebody else who would then send it back to us, which makes no sense to me.
That's a good point. This is an initiative out of the Office of Design, so I'll speak with Doug Young, the Assistant Director, and make that recommendation. But I think they're taking into account that, you know, some MPs may have multiple nominations. In years past, MPs had multiple nominations, so they wanted an opportunity for the body to make an official vote if there were multiple nominations.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I understand that, but I think the thing I didn't understand was that if we're going to have to resolve it anyway, why do we need to make the nominations to the Office of Design so that they can then send them back to us to vote on, instead of doing that all internally and sending them a nomination?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that'll eliminate a lot of legwork too, so than having to print out ballots and give to you guys. Yes, sir.
Who is authorized to make the nomination from the floor in this system?
So for the Community Design Awards, these are nominations from the NPU as a whole, so any resident that is involved in the NPU system. In fact, any resident, period.
So anybody
from the floor. But the NPU does need to vote on the nomination.
Would that depend on the rules of the specific NPU? I mean, I know different NPUs do business in different ways.
So the Community Design Awards are a nomination from the NPU. So instead of having just any resident walk in and make a nomination without getting input and support from the NPU, would defeat the purpose. It's from the NPU as a whole.
Right, I understand that, but I mean, some NPUs, not mine, but some NPUs do business through their executive committee, where the only voting members are members of their executive committee.
As long as it's voted on by the NPU. So in that case, the executive committee would make the recommendation versus
So, but going back to Richard's question, then, in fact, if you were in such an NPU, you would need to be a member of the executive committee.
No, his question was who can submit a nomination. The executive committee would just vote on it, but he can submit the nomination still.
Okay.
Right?
meeting on the floor, or to, I mean, your division of the city government, design, or anybody can make the floor from the floor nomination, is that what you're saying? At
So-
the time of the, presentation?
So you're talking about going forward or during the nomination period? During the nomination period, anyone from the NPU can make a
You
recommendation.
said make a nomination from the floor. What, the floor of what meeting are you talking about?
NPU.
Oh, okay. Not your actual presentation of the award.
Richard,
No.
only half of this discussion is getting picked up on the microphone, and it's John's half, so.
You can repeat it if it's anything with that.
All right, thank you guys.
Okay, any other public comments?
Kyle Kessler for the Center for Civic Innovation again. Just to echo Ms. Thomas's comments, also outside, the Center for Civic Innovation has produced these fact sheets for city council that has information about the election, all the dates that were described earlier, as well as some basic information about the city and the role of city council. So please take one of these. If you know anybody in District 3, please pass this information along. It does have the date on there, but hopefully it's not providing specific information about the candidates, although if you do go to our website, which is voteatl.org, we submitted questionnaires to all 9 candidates. We got 6 responses, so there's 6 questionnaire responses are online. So if folks are interested in learning more about the candidates and not attending yet another forum, we've got that information available for them. Please take advantage of it. Thanks.
Okay, any further comments? At this time, I'm going to take a quorum call. Oops, one more. We have one more public comment.
I'm sorry. District 3 has a serious problem.
Please state your name.
Lena Reed Morrow. District 3 has a serious problem because all of the libraries are closed for voting. Those people had to come downtown. Many of them are senior citizens, so coming downtown to vote has been a problem for them. So can we do anything to help them for early voting the next election they have? Because in the runoff, they are going to need somewhere else to go other than coming downtown. Hello?
That is not within our preview. That would be with
You
the
can't send a
elections.
letter to somebody?
We can register the complaint, if you will, if you send an email to APAB requesting such action, we can possibly follow up on it in executive committee and then do a resolution from that point.
No.
Okay. Ms. Thomas?
Cornell Thomas, may I respond briefly regarding the concern for the early voting? Our municipal clerk had initially indicated that there would not be early voting, and that decision was changed. And in the runoff, I don't know that anybody has announced that there would be early voting or not. Based on the number of votes, is it necessary to do, and I'm raising a question, is it necessary to do early voting for this particular one district in this particular election of the councilman?
Who is the question being addressed to?
Rhetorical.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Eric, I just wanted to make it clear, so the city actually did not change their standpoint on early voting. The county is doing early voting.
Okay, that was an important statement. Could you repeat that again, please?
So again, the clerk's office stood by their initial decision to not do the early voting. So instead, Fulton County took up that responsibility. That's why the seniors are having that issue with heading over to Fulton County.
Okay, thank you. Steve or Mr. Carr?
Just plain old Steve. I want to address approximately 10 key affordable housing bills. This is the printed piece of paper that I hope you all got. And there's a lot of other bills that are going through the current General Assembly. And it's kind of at the last moment. However, I would encourage everyone to address the website, which that's a foreign language to me, called legis, L-E-G-I-S, .ga.gov. And there's an alternative, and that is to call the Lieutenant Governor's office, and you go through a process called Georgia General Assembly, and then you click on either the House or the Senate, click on the committees, and then you can get to the chairs and members of the committees and their contact information. There are several important items and one particular one that I am very interested in, and that's HR, as in House Resolution, HR 164, dedication of revenue by general law, that's 164. The money that's supposed to go to high school driver's education is being diverted, stolen into the general fund. That's why we don't have driver's ed in this state. The money that is paid when you get new tires, the money that's supposed to go to the reclaim of the discarded tires, is not going in that direction. It's going into the general fund, which means it's being hijacked by the General Assembly. These are two examples of monies that's supposed to be dedicated that's going elsewhere. So that's House Bill 164. Last year, it was almost unanimous vote by the House, except for one vote, to pass this. But our former governor, Casey Cagle, and his friendly Senate committee chair sat on it. So the money is still going into the General Assembly. There's a little bit more details on this, but I would strongly encourage anybody and everybody to find out more about this 164. There's two specific areas where you can find out more. One is that website called Legis, legis.ga.gov, and or call the Lieutenant Governor's office, because the Lieutenant Governor is the one that assigns the bills to the, I would say appropriate committees, but let's just say the committee of choice. So once we get that 164 taken care of, then we're going to find that tires disappear instead of being an eyesore and a blight, and as breeding grounds for all of these fine hypodermics called mosquitoes that produce Zika, encephalitis, malaria, yellow fever, and we keep on going. There's also a number of housing and affordable housing legislative actions taking place too. And there is another source, and bear with me, John, I'm not as fluent as you are, and it's called House ATL, HOUSEATL.org. And they can provide more information specific to legislation that of concern about housing. So just remember 164, and hopefully anybody and everybody will call their legislator and any other legislator and say, make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any other public comment? Okay, at this point, I know it might seem a little bit ridiculous, but I'd like to do a quick quorum call to ensure that we do not have a quorum.
If your name is called, please say here loudly. NPU A, Brinkley Dickerson. NPU B, Richard Braw. Here. Dr. John Muzzy. NPU C, Zach Gober. NPU D, James Martin. Here. Self. NPU E, Elizabeth Ward. Sean Green. NPU F, Debbie Skupczynski. NPU G, Ola Reynolds. Simon Hodges. Here. NPU H, Barbara Hubbard. Here. Charles Shelton. NPU I, Eunice Glover. Jennifer Freeman. NPU J, Benjamin Dickerson. Al Bartel. Here. NPU K, Lita Harmon. NPU L, Yvonne Jones. NPU M, Michelle Schreiner. Rashid Muhammad. NPU N, Amy Stout. Here. NPU, sorry?
Just have to say all right.
Thanks. NPU O, Carl Holt. Marcus Owens. NPU P, Rasheen Hunter. Present. NPU Q, Eric Toomer.
Present.
NPU David Getchie Smith. NPU R, Antonita Robinson. Alfred White. NPU S, Chris Brown. Nate Cass.
Excuse me, I'm actually here for Chris Brown. I'm Daniel Burrows, Vice Chair of the APUS. This is my first APAD meeting, so I don't know if I'm supposed to sign it or anything.
There is a sign-in up there. Most of these are listed as formally registered as APAB delegates or alternates, which is a process that has to be emailed over to the planning office. So we're really excited you're here, but you will not count towards quorum today.
Before we go,
Basically, I'd like to repeat the process for being an alternate. An email needs to be sent from the chairman of the MPU to the planning office and copy to the president, Debbie Koczynski. And that way we will properly have you registered as an alternate if you are to be. Other than that, we cannot accept by word of mouth that you're supposed to represent the organization.
So that was MPUS, was where I went to. MPUT, Terry Ross. Donovan Dodds. MPUV, Columbus Ward Jr.
Here.
Stephanie Flowers. MPUW, Jack Brundler. Steve Carr.
we're still here.
MPUX, Michael Hopkins. Reuben Burney. MPUY, Chris McCord. MPUZ, Ann Phillips. Sharita Grant. Here. Mr. Vice President, we do not have a quorum.
Okay, with that in mind, we do not have a quorum. We can not conduct any formal business. And at this point, I will accept a nomination, a request from the floor for
Motion adjourned.
such a request is made. Okay, motion has been made. All in favor of the amendment?
All right.
We did get a second, I'm sorry. We did get a second, Mr. All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.